This is Leah Durante from leahdurante.com, and you are listening to Vroom, Vroom, Veer with Jeff Smith, reminding you to ditch stress and turn your triggers into glimmers.
I love it. I want to ditch stress. All right, I'm going to hit stop.
I can help.
Hey, there you go. I'll be right back. Hold on.
Sure.
Are you ready to thoughtfully steer away from your revved up, frenzied, and far too often scripted life? Then welcome to Vroom Vroom Veer with Jeff Smith, where he guides you down the road differently traveled by sharing unique experiences with guests who have managed to shift away from a life stuck on cruise control and veered their way into a more authentic and fulfilling one in all sorts of interesting and kind of remarkable ways. Get ready to Vroom Vroom Veer with your differently traveled road chauffeur, Jeff Smith.
Lynn Mull, thank you so much for being on Vroom Vroom Veer and welcome to the show. How's it going?
It is going great. A little snowy here where I live, but otherwise it is sunny and bright.
Sunny and bright's good. Yeah, there's been some crazy weather. I just talked to my parents in Michigan. I think they got like 10 inches of snow dumped on them last week. And my dad was mad. He was like, I didn't get to use the snowblower. I was like, why? Somebody came and plowed me out.
I'm sure there will be plenty of other opportunities.
Yes. But he gets upset because he spent a lot of money on that very expensive, snowblower. And he really likes to use it in his 80s. It's his social thing, right? He gets to go and like all the ladies that don't have a husband around with a snowblower, he takes care of them. Exactly. So then, it's like a work thing, I guess. Whatever.
Yeah. And then you're out there with the other people.
Out there. Yes. Yeah. He has to remember to drink water so he doesn't pass out and end up in the emergency room. But other than that, yes, fun stuff. Okay. So you are at lynnmull.com. Talk a little bit about what you're most excited about in your business today.
Well, I have at the end of last year partnered with a woman from A Brighter Year. And I know this is a pod, but I'm showing Jeff on camera my new miniature coloring book. And it is I'm all about the practical pause. And so I'm really excited about this mini coloring book.
That's cool.
I really love to partner with people who are easy to work with. And A Brighter Year has so many cute, adorable coloring books. They're great for, they're very simple on purpose. And my Oracle deck's the same way. So we just aligned, and I love partnering with, like I said, people who are easy to partner with. So we got this done and it launched really in January. So it's just fun. I'm into having fun, not overthinking things. And it's got words and symbols.
Clarity. I love it.
You got a pocket, you can buy one. If you, sit in the car.
And you don't even have to color it if you don't want to.
No.
Ooh, neat. I kind of want to go through all of those and talk about what they mean to you. Ooh, that's a good one. I know. Yeah, that would be fun. Now I want one.
And then you'd be shipping some off. But I'm excited about other things. But I do like a product moment, just because I know we're going to get into this, but I wasn't that able to be that creative for that many years. And it was very regulated and all of that. So this is like my opening my Oracle deck and creating workshops. It's like my creative outlet, and it's not for everyone, but I don't take photographs, but I create ways to make people chill out, because I always needed to chill out. So
everybody needs to chill out. Totally. Everybody needs to chill out. Yes. Yeah. I think we're on the same page and we all need to chill out.
Right. And
yeah.
we were joking about the snow and all that, but we have had a lot of together time as a family, and I sometimes need a little break. I'm an introvert at heart. And so I need that little pause by myself. And so I'm like, sometimes I always joke with my girlfriends. I'm like, we can't go move to Italy for 6 months and have an eat, pray, love moment, but we can certainly hide at the dining room table after dinner, dishes are in the sink, and color or doodle or
just be quiet together kind of idea. Yeah. Yeah.
Sit down.
I've recently learned that being quiet together is like, especially if like the TV is off. Like if like, I know everybody did a lot of Netflix binging during still, right? During lockdown, my wife and I were so like, what do they call that? Just like tired of being in the house. You get that like, there's a word that I'm like blanking on, but you get that like, I feel like stuck in this house. I just got to get out of here. We would like drove to LA to our old neighborhood, find a hotel and watch Netflix in the hotel. But it was awesome because it was
a different space.
There was nothing open, right? You're in lockdown, right? It was almost like, we had to lie to let the hotel like have us stay there because they had this like rule. You couldn't actually stay in the hotel unless you were there for business. Oh. Stupid California law. So the guy looked at me and said, "You're here for business, right?" And I went, "Yeah." He says, "Great." That happened a lot. Yeah. That actually, I remember my dentist called me and she started leading me towards the fact that my teeth had to be hurting if I wanted my cleaning. I was like, okay, yeah, my teeth hurt because they're dirty.
Lead the witness.
That's right. Exactly.
Lead the witness. Well, they do say, now I don't tell my kids I told you this, but they do say that when you watch TV, not for 8 hours, but your brain does relax and loosen. So it's almost in some ways meditative. And so sometimes what I've been learning and reading and all my work on the people call it manifesting. I just call it goals. But
sure.
You can actually relate to a character you're watching. Now, hopefully you're not watching like murder mysteries or something, but
right.
If you see a character that you're like, oh, I like that part of that character.
Sure.
You can start to really pay attention and your nerves pick up on those characteristics. So it's actually not all that bad, although
too much of anything.
Give ourselves breaks.
Yeah.
Just give yourself a break.
Yeah.
Although Netflix does come on pretty darn fast after you finish that next episode.
It does.
A little fast for me.
Everything's a little fast for me too. Okay, so this is Vroom Vroom Veer. We need to go back in time and talk about Lynn. Like, I know you were a student athlete in college. So where did you go to school? Did you go to school in the East Coast or West Coast?
Yeah, so I did. I have lived on East and West, but I grew up in Pennsylvania where I'm living now, which is
right.
part of my story, why I came back. But also I grew up in Pennsylvania. I went to Bucknell, which is a D1 school. It's called the Patriot League. And I played volleyball. I ultimately got hurt and wasn't able to continue all 4 years. But I think it gave me it really led me to leadership, team
sure.
dynamics, which we all have, whether it's work, school, whatever projects we have, and how to deal with people you don't love, teammates you can't understand, like their communication styles are different, things like that. And then just time management. When you're a student athlete, it's quite incredible what people are put through. And it's even worse now. Like I wasn't really weightlifting like they lift now. And they didn't have, unfortunately, a lot of the mental help that athletes get now. Like there are, like these sports psychiatrists who can come and help you. So I wasn't part of that. It was like real volleyball. It was old school. Yeah. And nothing I felt really,
you get discipline,
lucky.
Leadership. Yeah.
All of that.
And you get no workout, right?
Got to get those adrenaline out and sweat out all the toxins. So I still have that. Like I don't have a problem working out. I don't have a problem motivating. I don't have a problem working out at home. Like that works. I mean, being in the Air Force, did you feel like you still have some of that?
You'd be surprised how couchy the Air Force is for physical fitness, but it's, that's relative to the other services. Does that make sense? You know where I'm going?
I get that.
Yeah. So like a lot of my Air Force career, they didn't really even have a fitness program in the Air Force, embarrassingly so. They had a weight management program. That was the fitness program. So if you were fat, you got in trouble.
You had to figure out how to do it. I bet though you had.
No, that was literally all the way up until, so I don't want to get too deep into me, but so like up to a certain point, it really was like they would just make you show up once a year and run 1.5 miles. So, and without any required training, right? So I would say most people were fine, right? Because, you're in the military, you're young. And even if you're not doing anything, you can show up and run 1.5 miles in your 20s and your 30s, usually, right?
True.
But
it sounds like high school. It sounds like the presidential fitness challenge when we were in high school.
It's so weird. So at some point, Congress yelled at the Air Force because some small percentage of people were dropping dead during their annual fitness test. They would just have a heart attack and die, right? And they're like, they're not really all that fit. Right.
Maybe we should do some proactive.
Maybe we should have a fitness program instead of a fat boy program. So anyway, that's all. Once we did that, then yes. Right. So that's a long way of getting around to saying, yeah, when you actually have required fitness, not only that, but there was also a leadership component there too.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
So I was never considered myself a great athlete, but I would do the thing, right? If it's part of my job, so I have to do the thing, right? Whatever that thing is, right? You want me to run, I'll go run, right? You want me to ride this stupid bike, I'll go ride a stupid bike. So they switched for a while there to bike, that you have to go do this sub VO2 and ride a bike, and then they put you on a computer. The idea there was nobody died, right? But you had to go, in order to pass that test, you had to ride a stationary bike. Or, I guess you could have rode a bike, right? So then they did away with that again, and then they went back to running. So when I was in charge of a shop, I had 20 somethings, and they were pushing me to get better. Yeah, exactly. Good face. That's exactly what I thought, because I was trying to keep up with them, and that made me want to throw up while I was running, because I'm late 30s and they're 20 something. But the good side was the girl that was struggling with passing the test, I got to help her. Exactly. Look at me. I'm the old guy. Try to keep up with me. And she passed. So that made me feel good. I could do something about that, Anyway.
Yeah, that's the original team building, right? Get together, try to have this goal.
Just have fun. I tried to make running fun, which is I
don't think
tricky.
My college volleyball was not. The social component and the dining hall, eating together, great. The workouts, the double 2 practices a day.
It's too much, right?
Interrupting my studies, and I wasn't even terribly good, meaning I'm not playing at Penn State and I'm not getting pulled out of classes to fly to California. It was all pretty local, drivable stuff. So
right.
It's very disruptive and also amazing in the same way. And so ultimately my body declined from all the years of jumping. I played front row. I'm very tall. And,
right.
And so my body was you can't keep jumping on hardwood floor and blocking. And so my body told me, my body told me no more.
Nothing wrong with that.
But I played again in my 20s in San Francisco. We played a lot of co-ed. That's how I made all my friends. So shout out to all my San Francisco crew.
It's not so bad if it's not what you're saying, all intense, right? It's you're just practicing so much. There's a wear and tear feature or factor that you have to consider there. And
they've gotten a lot better at the data and the knowledge, but it's still any college. And even, we could talk about this. It's probably another podcast now that I have daughters. I just don't, I didn't have to choose my sport. Everyone else has had to choose at the age of 8. And I'm let's just play all the things. Let's play, let's try and
see what's fun for you.
I'm trying to keep it chill for my kids.
Right. Cool. Okay. So did you study finance in college?
I studied economics. My dad used to take napkins, literally the napkins on the kitchen table.
Yeah.
and he would draw charts and graphs. He was obsessed with drawing supply and demand curves. He was obsessed with drawing. I shouldn't say obsessed, but he just did it.
Yeah, yeah.
He'd be like, well,
because that was fun for him.
And he's just recently is gone part-time. He's a financial advisor, but he started off selling insurance and then moved into the investment space. And so he was having to explain this to clients all the time: risk, reward, supply, demand. Why is he was teaching us about stock. So if we got money for whatever grade, or we didn't get an allowance, but let's just say birthday money, he was the one who would say, like, we would open up the physical paper and he would show me all the stocks and he would say, here are 3 or 4 I think you should think about, and I'm going to invest your money for you. Or when I was 14 and working at a snack bar, he would say, let's take half of that check and invest it. So it was like part of my...
That's awesome.
It was not easy for me, but it was like part of my vocabulary at home. Or he would sit down and explain what a mortgage was in the 80s when interest rates were finally coming down. So it was like I was sort of around it. So econ felt natural, although I did go in as a bio major. Chemistry was not my jam. Not my jam. Couldn't do it. Not going to do organic chem. Why torture ourselves?
I've heard that before.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, good for you. And from my perspective, you were lucky, right? Like I was basically thrown out there in my 20s, with like no concept of money, none whatsoever. Like, oh, now I have a job. What do I do with all this money? Do I keep it? What, do I spend it on crap? What do I do? I
was probably the only 18-year-old at the time who knew what a Roth IRA was. And
yeah, that's awesome. Good
he's like, it's tax
time. Good for
time.
Your dad. Yeah.
It's tax time. So one of my dad's claim to fame is he can draw upside down. So he still to this day, if he meets with a client in person, which is getting less and less, he takes his yellow, huge legal pad and he will draw these graphs upside down. And he always has a framed picture of the stock market since the 2930s. And he will show how the patterns repeat. So he has a way of teaching that I think lands, which I guess stuck with me for better or for worse. And he also was he also was a bookworm in a different way than my mom was. So I think like this idea of learning stuff to help you make sense of the world, like the nonfiction world, or listening to talk radio. I mean, those voices on NPR when you're a kid is like nails on a chalkboard. And now I'm listening to audibles, and my girls get in the car and they're like, another Audible book. Like, what are you listening to? I'm like, I'm just trying to learn.
Yeah. 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 That's awesome. I love, so when you said like long car rides and audio books, I'm down with that. I know exactly what you mean. You got to go find that. I think the only time I actually did that was back when they had like CDs. Yeah. If you can believe that. Right. So I was like fuddling around with, I think I listened to a novel, like one of those John Grisham novels,
Yeah.
And I drove from Florida all the way up to Michigan to see my parents. It was awesome. I ran out of book before I ran out of drive. And it was so sad.
I know. That's so interesting. I forgot about that. We never did that as a family. And I never did the books on tape, but I know about them. And then
yeah.
I did.
It's a different world now, You can stream everything, right? You can download everything you want. Yeah.
I know the kids are spoiled. One of the things I did early on was one of the first podcasts, I think someone should fact check this, but it was called Serial.
Serial. Yes. Serial was so good. Yeah, so good.
Got so scared because we had left New York City, which I know we'll get into. And then I came to Pennsylvania because my mom was sick, and I used to commute from here to New Jersey. And it's very difficult to get from where I live to the Princeton, New Jersey area, back roads and cornfields. And
yeah. The East Coast is crazy for driving. Yes.
Yeah. It's just nuts. No path. It was beautiful. And on the way home, it would get dark and I literally could not drive through these cornfields and listen to Serial because I got so scared that there was someone coming out of the cornfields. So you got to be careful what you listen to on what part of the drive.
Yeah. I wish that guy would. I think the guy got out of jail. Serial season 1. Yeah, he finally got out of jail. So sad that it took that long. I'm still mad about the Making a Murderer. Did you watch that on Netflix?
No.
Don't, because it's got, it's really good, but you kind of hope the guy's going to get out of jail, and he doesn't. Reality usually sucks.
Complex worlds we live in.
Yes. Okay. So, all right. So you graduate college, you've got some sort of econ degree. So how do you get your first finance job, and what's it like?
So my internship was at GE, and talk about luck. My college roommate's dad worked at GE and got me an internship. And then I, from there, was led on a very direct path to go into one of the many GE leadership training programs that Jack Welch had started. So I did a 2-year, and then I stayed at GE for 3 years after that. But I did a 2-year, I physically moved every 6 months for 2 years. So I did 4 rotations. I did a leadership program. I got to go to Crotonville under Jack Welch, which is like their leadership university. It's still around today. I just ran into a bunch of GEers up in Connecticut, and they're like, I get to go to Crotonville still. And it's an amazing, amazing place. So talk about leadership. It was like shot out of the gate.
Yeah. Sounds like the military. Moving around all the time, getting exposed to new things and different pieces and leadership. Yeah. Like most officers are doing that. They're like officer world. If you're like a pilot, if you get to stay in one place for a year, you're doing something wrong because you're not upwardly mobile anymore.
You're not going anywhere.
Exactly. Yeah. You have to move to move up anyway. Yeah.
So you technically graduated after your 4 rotations, and then you weren't guaranteed a job, but you were likely to get a job. So I landed out in one of the divisions. This is when Six Sigma was really big. Not that it's still, it was this very trendy thing. And we had a great group. I loved my time at GE. I reference it still quite a bit. And I'm not a hoarder. I don't really keep a lot of things. I don't have a problem decluttering, but I have kept my original GE binders. I have physical binders.
Yeah.
Because of how amazing that structure was, the pillars of leadership. And what the best part is that Jack Welch at the time, in my experience as a peon, as an intern, first year out of college, second year up until 5 years, is like, you knew the priorities at the ground level. And I'm sure in the military, you probably feel the same way, but I was like, at the time it was get everything we do on the internet, everything.
Yeah.
On the internet or the intranet. And if you don't do that, you're failing your job. So it was like, we're going to do this, and we have this other component. And it was so simple.
You have your job, and then you also have to do this other thing too, right?
It was clear. It was so clear.
Okay. Gotcha.
It wasn't
that's good.
like...
That's good. That's rare. I'll say that's rare.
I know, right?
Yeah, right. The clarity is so rare. Yeah.
And we all did it. We all did it. The boss did it. I did it. We all knew what the thing was, and it would change.
It's amazing. Like when you have that organizational clarity like that, that's super clear, then everything is like a lot less stressful. And things come up. I mean, it's not like stress-free, but that like ambiguity of you don't really know what's going on, or, you read this mission statement or this vision and it's just a bunch of BS, right? Yeah, that's most corporations, right? But that's awesome. So I didn't know that.
Yeah, or like
GE
they'll
was
say,
like that. Yeah.
My other experience in various divisions of the bank that I worked in, of which there were 5 or 6 that I worked in through mergers, is like, well, we're going to say this is our priority, but then also everyone gets to decide what their own priorities are. So every team is like their own snowflake, and you're like, wait.
Interesting.
And you're battling each other because your priorities are different than their priorities. And then, like you said,
yeah. I get it.
They draw this BS line to the top. Well, this is how it relates to the top. So it was actually very clear. Everyone did it. And for good or for better or for worse, he did lay off people who didn't make the cut. Like, so there was not a lot of bottom dwellers too. And you had to sort of keep up, like you said, got to run the mile.
Yeah.
You can't die. You can't throw up.
Right. It was okay to throw up. You just couldn't die.
But don't die. Like, at GE, it was like, if you didn't pass the test,
right,
whatever the test was, that priority, that thing,
yeah,
you got laid off.
Right.
You got let go.
Yeah,
Now,
that's right.
maybe in some cases, if you were like, oh, that just wasn't a good fit, they would replace you. But more often than not, they let people go. They were so good about
I think that's
taking
good though.
out. I mean, and it doesn't happen. And part of it's state, part of it's legislation, part of it's, I'm not at the top of a corporation anymore, but
Right.
it's not the same.
So, okay. So you say you worked at some banks. So what sorts of things, what sorts of roles were you doing in banks? Because I have no clue. I did actually work at a bank. It was like an investment style bank. So the guys that worked in the back were like, they had money from Singapore. It was a like DBS bank. So it was basically the government bank of Singapore, the LA branch. So you couldn't get an account there. But what I found out was that was how Singapore invests in movies. So,
True.
right. Each dude in the back there at DBS Bank LA, up on the, whatever 14th floor, they knew producers that were good at making movies that made money. And
Wow.
yeah. I learned a lot. That's why movies are made, because people want to make money. Right. So anyway, so what did you do in a bank?
So when I was at GE, I left the East Coast. A lot of my time was up in Connecticut at the time. And then I moved to San Francisco and I worked north of the city. And I got recruited to work at Bank of America for my Six Sigma skills. So when I first started, I was doing like basic efficiency operations, looking at people pushing paper, pushing
like a consultant
products.
almost, an internal consultant.
Exactly. Project management. What are you doing? Do we need to do this? Just asking a lot of questions, had a ton of training. And then while I was in that role, I did my first merger. So that was my first of 4 mergers. And I was, again, like you said, like a project consultant. I considered it my real life case study MBA. It was fun. I was young. I had a lot of airline miles. I
Right.
was not necessarily paid at the top, but I was paid in experience. I was given huge roles. Lynn, you run all of the project managers. They always did it. They divided it operations and sales. So one merger, I'd be on the ops side, figure out operations. Why is it doing that? Then the other one, it would be, work on the sales side, get experience. And they had technology people and lawyers and accountants and all these things. But it was like, how are we going to put these two companies together? So it was analysis, very structured. Bank of America had, they had a very good process. And I was quick to follow it. So I did lots of things. I did eventually want to get out of the business of being on the road.
Right. Right. That takes a toll.
I would get really sick every once in a while. It was my first clue, bronchitis for 2 weeks, missed a friend's wedding. I'm like, this isn't that healthy.
Right.
And it was the good old days. We were on a corporate budget. So it was like credit card here, dinner out there, drinks here. It was a lot. And you were working really hard to meet these deadlines. We had massive deadlines every Friday. So it was just this
grind.
It was a great, exciting rhythm, but it was also pretty hard. So I got out, I went into the business. So into the line of business out of that internal consulting audit role. And I moved in and took a job in operations in the trust company out in San Francisco. It's so funny how you said, the 14th floor. When I was in New York, I was on the 42nd floor. When I was in San Francisco, I was on the 9th floor. Like, I remember.
Right.
You hit that button so many times. So I call it my big girl job. I was 30 years old. I was wearing suits made for 50-year-olds. Like, I was young. I knew my stuff. And I was a leader in the merger space, but post-merger integration for that business was very emotional. So I was doing a lot more communicating, a lot more standing up and speaking. Why are we doing this? And really figuring out how to listen to people. So very early on, I stopped going into a group of people, sales assistants, and saying like, well, we're emerging in this and the technology is going to be great. It was like, what do you think? What did you do in your old company that you can bring forward? Or what do your clients think? How can we help them? And so changing the dynamic, they call them listening tours now, but we were doing that long ago.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Just go in and get ready to download a bunch of info, take a bunch of notes, record the conversation.
Sometimes you can't do anything about it, right? Like sometimes you're like, yeah,
it's still worth it though. It's still worth doing it because then people feel heard. Yeah.
And then sometimes it was valuable and you heard it enough. You're like, hey, I can actually influence this. So then I worked through that. And then I decided after so long in San Francisco, more socially, I got pretty wiped out of California. And my sister had gotten out of college and moved to New York and she was loving it. And I was like, hey, I think I'm going to do this New York thing for a while. East Coast summers are hard to beat. I know California has amazing weather, but I was like, yeah, I sort of want to feel the heat, the humidity, see my family, see some college friends again. And I had missed a lot, the birthdays, the weddings, the anniversaries. So I was like, oh, I'm going to do this New York thing. Took a job again in the trust company right around 2007. And then I was part of the Merrill Lynch Bank of America merger, which was a big deal for me.
Huge. Oh my goodness.
I got a call on a Monday of Labor Day and I was downtown on Tuesday. My boss got a call. Lynn's not coming into work. We don't know when she'll be back. She's on the SWAT team. And it's in a couple of books.
Team. That's great. SWAT.
The meetings I was in and conversations I heard with some of the former Merrill people it is literally documented in newspapers, books. I was part of, it was so intense. I don't really think I understood. There were a couple times where I was like, oh my gosh, should this be being allowed? Not fraudulent, but some like pretty aggressive business decisions.
Slightly shaky.
Maybe you should talk to someone else about this before you just do this. But
right.
I was literally a fly on the wall sometimes. Made some of the best relationships that I've ever made and was able to call on those when I needed in the future. But then I spent the rest of my career at Merrill. And when I left, I was running strategy for the 6,000 client associates who are sales assistants all over the country. And although I loved the job, I loved the group that I supported. I didn't love where things were going and my nervous system didn't like it. And I had created a plan to leave.
Oh, nice.
I'd been chipping away.
Right. Okay. So when did you find, I thought you said you found like an Equinox yoga studio near your office in New York, right? And that was sort of like the beginning of the move out.
Yeah. So my yoga instructor is now one of the top Peloton instructors and I crack up.
Yeah.
She's very connected to the Broadway scene. So what would happen in these classes is she would have these Broadway singers come in and do the end. They would sing in these yoga studios and they would reverberate and it would reset my brain. Now, I will also tell you at the same time, while I was in New York, right at the start of my time in New York, my mom was very sick with cancer. And so I was trying to help navigate. She had emergency surgery and
wow.
I don't want to make this pot about her, but there were stressors at work. I was in a new job. The market crashed. I was working insane hours. I had no time to make friends, see my sisters, see my college friends. It was and then my personal life was super stressful because we couldn't figure out what to do with her and her treatment was causing all these side effects. So that's going on about 2 hours away. I have no social life. I only have work life and the work life is so intense and everyone's freaking out because the market had crashed. And so I was like, I need to do something. What worked? And there were two things that I did is one, I joined my college alumni network. They had it in San Francisco. I was like, that was a really good group of people, different than my norm. And so I joined that, and which is how I ended up meeting my husband in that same year or 2 years later. And then I was like, I need to do yoga. Yoga was good in California. You can't really go running in Central Park when you get out of work at 9 p.m.
Jeez.
Right. So
right. Getting out of work at 9 p.m. Wow. Ouch.
So then it all sort of comes full circle, but my yoga studio became my place in New York that, we talk about it now, but at the time it wasn't like this. It was like my phone goes in my locker. I am underground. It was an underground studio. You had to go down a level and I would be There's a lot of people trying to get really into their own mental space. And they would always say, this is your mat. Do what you want. You have this space. And I just felt quiet. I felt even in the craziness of New York City, my cell phone won't work in the basement. I wasn't allowed to bring it into the room. I didn't have Apple Watches weren't invented yet. So like there was no way to get me.
Right.
And
right.
that
You needed that a lot. Yeah.
And when you pay for those memberships at those gyms or whatever, and you're young and you've got this expensive apartment, like you make it work, like you go. So I was doing that.
You've got skin in the game. You have to go. Right.
So I was doing it, and it provided me a place to breathe, to exhale, I really did. Every teacher that I went to anyway would say like, I'm going to direct you, but if you need to linger longer or you want to do another move. And so it felt permission. I had a lot of permission there. Whereas at work, not a lot of permission in those
no
2007, 8 days, not a lot of permission. It was like,
just the grind. Your hair is on fire.
Everyone was scared. The top execs, everyone was scared.
Well, the sky was falling, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they were watching CNN show people taking what we thought was, these golden eggs, and they were walking out of Bear Stearns with their stuff in a box, right? And you knew just as many people, if you'd worked in finance, who were impacted in some way. And so it was... the world felt heavy, work felt heavy, and I didn't feel heavy there. I finally felt like
you could exhale a little bit.
Yeah, you felt tingly in a good way. Like,
I can breathe here. Yeah.
Breathe here.
Wow. So, okay. So what's the next move? I mean, your health is probably not great. And you're experiencing burnout. You just don't know what that label is, probably. I don't know. I'm guessing. So what does it look like when you finally quit your job? Or are you still doing that? I don't know.
No. So the real issue, I think, was like you go into this mode of caregiver, and then I was getting married and I had 2 kids. And the real kicker was that second kid. I had relocated to Pennsylvania. I was commuting towards Princeton, and my husband was commuting, and I had 2 kids, and my mother was still really sick. So I'm in this stage of new mom. Work still wanted me to travel, and my mom was still in despair. So I had one really significant trigger, and I talk a lot about it, is these milestone moments. So milestones, like I have a client I've worked with since she's been 25. She's like, by my 25th birthday, I think I should have this title. So sometimes it's age, but for me, it was like multiple things happening at once, a move, a pregnancy, but then this terrible thing happened upon my return to work with my second child. And my colleague was calling me, but I was literally like 10 days out. And getting your computer set back up was like an act of God. And so I was like, she's calling me because she needs to like know my birth date to turn my laptop back on, or something. This is what I'm thinking, right? Or she's trying to make sure she can open the doors the first day I get there because my badge won't work. This is literally what I'm thinking. It's 5:00 on a Thursday. I'm with my kids because I'm still on maternity leave. Then I had not hired a nanny. And I found out my boss had been murdered that day by her husband. And so it was Wait a
minute. Let's stop there and take a breath.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. So your boss,
her name was Sue.
Her name Sue was murdered by her husband. And that's why your coworker is calling you.
So the hysterics, the crying, that I had to hand the baby, my, at the time, 5-month-old over to my husband. And I just sit there and I can't really make sense of what she's saying to me. And yeah. And so that was my straw. I'm like, this is so
Crazy.
So messed
It's
This
so
is
crazy.
so-
Wow.
And one of those people who mentored everyone. She would have a line outside of her door of people wanting her advice. Never knew there was anything wrong. I knew she was starting to think about getting a divorce, but like we didn't know. And then so my first day back at work was her funeral, and
Jeez. Wow.
I was like, time out in my brain and my heart and my body. I'm like, time out. I am not doing this anymore. Like,
So
my
that
mom,
was it. Wow. Okay.
my mom was sick. Someone who I admired, who had the title and the 2 kids and the beach house and the house in New Jersey and the this and the that and the salary, and she's gone.
Crazy.
And it was enough to get me on the path to say, what's next? And I signed up for coaching training. And I said to my husband, I'm doing this, like, I need to do this. And it was still in person back then. I think they're still back to being in person, but I was able to start to find a trajectory. Now, when that happened, could I have said I was going to quit and all of that? No, I didn't know. I just knew, you know what, if nothing else happens, I need to reset my brain and find another way to work.
Like you're working on your exit strategy some more, but in earnest, like, you need to leave at this point. And now you just have to figure out how to make it happen, kind of idea.
They made us sit. Now, I wasn't there every day. I had a pass to work from home long ago.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Before COVID. I was in 2 days a week, maybe 1 day a week, some days 3 days a week. But I had a visitor's cubicle.
Right.
And then you could always get conference rooms and things.
Sure.
And they made us sit in that same exact floor, in that same exact space, and they just shut her door. And I was like, this place is going to kill me. My mom is almost dead. Now, my mom is alive now, but I said, this is not right. This place is literally going to take me out.
Right.
And so I just knew. And listen, have any of the people I worked with or HR ever had that happen? I don't know. So I'm not blaming them, but I was like, I'm out. So I continue to work with coaches. I continue to think, read, journal. What do I want to do? And I couldn't tell you in that instant when I signed up for coaching training, like, would it lead to Reiki? Would it lead to yoga teacher training? Would it lead to, I don't know then, but you just start to get these little hints on what makes sense for you at that time. I also don't recommend everyone leaving.
No,
I don't. Sometimes staying put is the answer. It just maybe communicating differently. But for me, it took me 5 years to leave.
Wow. Yeah. I get it. Yeah. I'm with you on that. There's a lot of folks out there that are on the quit your job no matter what, because jobs are stupid train. No, most people need jobs. I agree. I actually did quit a job. It worked out, but I was doing like sort of like personal development workshops, and people that don't go to personal development workshops, they assume you're joining a cult. I didn't. It was actually personal development workshops, but they were definitely on that quit your job if you don't like it kind of train. It just worked out for me. How's that sound? Like, for me, yeah, it worked out. And I just recently, like last April, quit my last grown-up job. So, but that's a whole nother story.
Right. And you know what? And I say, like, maybe, who knows? But as long as you know what's aligned and what's working, and I just kept chipping away. It's like, what's aligned, what works. And sometimes most people in my circle have to stay at some sort of job, and my clients want to, and I do like working. So
I think it's work is sort of like a spiritual thing beyond the fact that it fills you got to eat and pay bills and rent and stuff. There's something about our wiring that, that's kind of like I'm treating my podcast as my work. I don't want to call it a job because I pay to do it. I pay to do this podcast, right? There's no advertising. I'm doing it because I enjoy talking to people.
Yeah.
and meeting people and hopefully helping the listeners and maybe you too. I don't know, but this is what I'm treating as my work now, right? It's super easy and I want to keep it that way. Like if somebody were to come up to me and say, we'll give you, 6 figures to do this professionally, but you got to do all this extra stuff, I would say no. No.
Right.
Right. Because that would ruin it. Right. It's what it is because it's easy, and it's fun and it has no pressure. Right. Like you would call me and like, oh, I'm running late. Do you have 5 minutes? Of course. I'm not doing anything. So,
well, you're also a kind soul. No, I know.
Yeah.
You did. I was running late because of that silly snow.
Life happens, as they say. So, okay. So what are we doing now? Let's bring this all into like, your deal, like lynnmull.com, and talk about what you're doing for work now.
Yeah. So my life has really been great. I'm like 18 months out of corporate America and have.
It takes a time to like decompress.
I did have some stuff bubble up like 6 months after. I was sort of surprised it came back, but yeah, I'm doing the work, always doing the work. So what I'm doing now is I'm focused and honed in on helping people find clarity.
That's awesome.
I believe that there's a holistic approach. So before we started hitting record, we were talking about how I call my clients woo curious. So
yeah, I get it.
I look at things and I work with people in a holistic way. I pull from my Oracle deck. I have an Oracle deck I created and wrote in a weekend. And
talk a little bit about the Oracle deck. Just give us a little bit of. I'm woo happy. I'm happy to talk woo. I love woo. But when I hear Oracle deck, it launches a bunch of questions in my mind.
Yeah.
So just give us a little bit of what is the thought behind the Oracle deck? Is it like what's that? What am I trying to think of? The other thing.
It's not tarot.
That's what I was thinking of. Okay, it's not tarot.
So Oracle. Now you won't be able to unsee it, but the Oracle means decision, and every religion, historical society,
Sure.
Greek, Roman.
Oracle of Delphi, right?
Right. Egyptians, they all had oracles. Prophets is another type of word. And essentially an oracle deck were things that I used when I was at my lowest. And there's a deck that inspired me that I still use. And this was a Swedish one. It's called the Inner Compass deck. And it really,
wow. It looks
Oracle
cool.
She's beautiful. And these are bigger than mine, but the simplicity of it. So an Oracle deck essentially has no rules. Tarot has a certain number of cards you have to have. And I came from a place of high regulation, high rules. My emails were all read, which is all fine. I had no internet outside of the intranet except MSNBC and a couple of other news. Everything was blocked and regulated. So this is like no rules. I wrote, in particular, this is called the 24 Oracle because I believe there are phases of our life and there are 12 new moons and 12 full moons in one calendar year. And we see the moon. If there are, like a beautiful night like tonight, we'll see the moon, and it's every 2.25 days, the moon changes to the human eye.
Ah, okay.
But think about it getting there. It's shifting all the time. And so I think we always want to be full, or we want to be, I wanted to be on time today, but we're all in these phases. And so maybe you're at a phase where you're ready to do this fun podcast. Maybe in 2 years, you're going to be like, you know what? I want to XYZ. I'm going to run a marathon or whatever your thing is. It can always change.
Right.
But I want people to meet themselves where they are. And really, I mean themselves. And the Oracle, I don't think we know how to do that. I think we know what social media tells us. I think we know what the books we read tell us. I think we know what our friends and family think we should do. I know what my dad thinks I should do, right? It's all these shoulds. And I use an Oracle deck. I don't use it every day anymore, but I wrote a booklet that goes with the cards.
Okay.
And it gives you ideas and prompts. But for example, surf. Surf is the card that's popped up just now on the phone.
Lovely.
On the Zoom.
I love it. Yeah.
And so this card, and I wrote it, so I know it, but this card is like Do you feel like you're in a high tide moment or a low tide moment? No judgment. Where are you?
Mm.
And then to think, let's just say you say, Lynn, I'm feeling low tide. I'm feeling like a little like me post holiday. I don't know, just I'm annoyed, or I had a weird conversation with my friend, whatever the situation is.
Right. Okay.
I would say, you know what? There's a wave coming. And it's okay to feel today. And it's okay to notice this week has been off because Mother Nature has been overacting. Your something didn't come you needed in the mail for a project you're doing in your backyard. Whatever the thing is, just like letting it be. And so my deck is all about anchoring on an idea. So as we're swirling about the weather. We're swirling about complaining about our friend who said the wrong thing. We're complaining that our dinner didn't turn out, or whatever is swirling in our head. Oh, my boss, can you believe they did that? What? I need an anchor. And my anchor this week is this card Surf. And I have to recognize that not every minute is going to be this beautiful, crashing, photographic, beautiful crest of a wave. And it's coming. It's coming.
Sure.
And so I found, and I don't know if you find this in the wellness space or in the people you've talked to, a lot of my yoga instructors or my workout instructors would always say to me, find your mantra for the class, or what's your purpose for your weightlifting today, or whatever the thing is.
Set an intention for the session.
What's your intention? Be like, I don't know. I'd be like, Jeff, I've got to buy 6 bananas and I have 12 tons of laundry, and that client proposal I never got back. Never got back. So, I have my anchor. So I've used this if I'm having a crappy day and I need to drive around with it because I got into a fight with someone. I use it if I want to feel inspired for art or writing. I use it in client sessions. I'll pull a card and say, like, we're doing a clarity session. You seem all over the place, Jeff. Do you want to drop in for a second? And we'll do some breath work. I'll pull a card. I'll talk about the card. And then we talk about
what comes up.
Yeah. And
I like it.
But there are also no rules. If you want to pick a card and never look at the book, cool.
It means what it means. Right.
And I want people to have that freedom to, be in the phase. And then that's why the offshoot of the coloring book, I'm like, just have some fun, because we're not all going on the Eat, Pray, Love ashram 6 months of a spiritual journey. Most of us don't have that opportunity or want to. So
Right.
how do you make this all work when you've got a ton going on with friends and family and business and personal stuff?
Yeah.
You just fit it in, and pulling a card takes 2 minutes.
Yeah. Or 2 seconds, whatever time you've got, you can do that.
Right.
Yeah. That's amazing. So Lynn Mull, this has been a blast. We've been talking almost an hour right now. Can you believe that? It went pretty fast.
I know. You never know, right? We meet these friends through social media and the internet, and it's fun to meet you. And we chatted back and forth a little bit before this, and then we chatted live. And I think it's cool to know that you are coming at this from a different angle, and I'm coming at it from a different angle, being stressed out on Wall Street, but like we're both wanting people around us to feel differently because it's possible. And I think that's so cool to come at it from different vantage points and end up in the same part of the Venn diagram. So
kudos to you, Lynn Mull. Thanks for reaching out. Thanks for hanging out with me for about an hour. So talk a little bit about how people can best get in touch with Lynn Mull at lynnmull.com.
Yeah. So I've got an email address on there, hello@lynnmull.com. I'm pretty active on Instagram. I still find it to be incredibly useful and ways to connect. So it's @_Lynn Mull.
Okay.
And my website has, articles I've written on Substack. So just keeping it simple, website, Instagram. And I would love to offer anyone listening, if you want to use the code 10, it's the word spelled out in all caps, TEN, on an order on any of the products I mentioned today, you will get 10% off. So
that's pretty easy. Easy to do and easy to remember. Excellent. Okay, perfect, Lynn. You have a good one.
You too. Be well.
Thanks for taking the time to ride along with us on another episode of Vroom Vroom Veer. For podcast info and show notes, be sure to head over to vvveer.com. That's VVER.com. Man, that's fun to say. And we'll catch up with you next time here on Vroom Vroom Veer.